Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Rockwell. I am the Chief Information Officer for the Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization, also known as the TPO. Thank you again for being here with us this morning for our fourth virtual outreach event. Next slide. Before we get started, I want to tell you the rules of the road. So this virtual workshop obviously is being recorded, which you heard. All of the attendees will remain muted throughout the workshop. And we encourage you all to submit any questions and comments using the Zoom webinar chat feature throughout the workshop. But please be aware, because of time restrictions, we are going to capture that information from you all, and we are going to respond directly to you afterwards. So please, 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 if you put anything and you have any questions or comments, please also include your email address so we can reach out and have a conversation with you. We would appreciate that. And then if you experience any difficulties throughout the workshop, please contact, you've got that 800 number there, 800-418-0524, so that technical support can assist you. All right, so let's go ahead to the next slide. Yes, so it's always very important. And for those of you who have been to our previous three or have been with us on this journey, the previous three virtual outreach events, we are still encouraging you all the way to the end to stay updated, stay informed, and visit us on our 2050 LRTP website. The web address is there. You have a QR code right there that if you want to right now, you can scan and go straight to the website. And then always, if you are in social media and you have any comments on social media about transportation in the future, please feel free to use our social media hashtag Miami-Dade in 2050. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the team for creating and developing an amazing virtual room. So when you come here to the website, along the top there, it says home, the plan, public involvement. If you select public involvement and scroll down, you can go into our virtual room. And it is so cool. I'm so proud of the team for developing this. And each phase, each room is opening up with new materials, new information, documents, videos, all kinds of information for you all to stay informed and hopefully keep you a little bit entertained. So with that, please stay with us all the way through the process of the development of the 2050 LRTP. Next slide. So today's conversation guides, there I am. I will be one of your guides, not just your welcome and closing, but I will actually be providing you some information. Maritere Vilcheslanda will be taking us through some important information as well. Francesca Taylor, as well as Christopher Rosenberg. Each of us will be on a special mode taking you through this morning's and this afternoon's VOE. Next slide. So what are we going to talk about today? What is our roadmap today? Well, we are going to go through the Smart Map 2050 LRTP overview. We're going to do an LRTP recap of the people phase, the performance phase, the projects phase, and the priorities phase. And then we're going to talk about the policy phase. So we're very excited that now we're actually talking about all 5 phases of the LRTP. And again, I will remind you in the end how to stay involved in this process. And let me just remind everyone who's joined us and didn't hear me in the beginning. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat, but please also put your email address in there because of time constraints, we're going to work with you directly after the virtual outreach event. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So at this time, I am biking over to Francesca, who's going to walk you through the recap of the 2050 LRTP phases and objectives.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good morning, everyone. So I'm walking us through the LRTP, but before we begin, you might be wondering, what is the LRTP? The LRTP, or Long Range Transportation Plan, is a federally required document. It represents our 25-year needs for our transportation system, and it's updated every 5 years. For this LRTP, we have labeled it the Smart Map 2050. So we're focusing on mobility, accessibility, and prosperity. It takes about 2 years to put together an LRTP, or a long range transportation plan. And so we've broken down that 2 year span into 5 phases, which we'll talk to you about, as Elizabeth mentioned. So the 5 phases that we'll talk to you about today are the people, which is how we engage the public. Elizabeth will come back and talk to you a little bit more about what we've done to promote outreach throughout our communities. Then we'll talk about the performance phase, which is where we developed our goals and objectives, but we also estimated what our future population and employment looks like. Mary Terry will talk to us about that process. Then I'll come back later and talk to us about the projects phase. This is where we did a lot of data development on what are the current concerns with congestion management, and then how do we put together the best set of projects to address those issues. And then I'll hand it over to Christopher Rosenberg, who will talk about the development of our cost feasible plan, how we take that list of project needs and match it to our revenues so that we can create a project list that can be funded with the revenues that we expect to have in the future. And then finally, I'll double back and close us out and talk about the policy phase. And in this, we're talking about all of the things that we've studied to help support our cost feasible plan, as well as all of the ways that we've evaluated our projects to ensure that they have environmental and socioeconomic screening. So you may be wondering, why does all this matter to you? Well, in the end, the 2050 LRTP Smart Map 2050 represents the values for all of us in our future transportation needs for Miami-Dade County. All right, so I'll hand it back over to Elizabeth.
Wonderful. Thank you, Francesca, for walking us through that. And now I am biking through the people phase. So yes, let's go back one, please. Thank you. So public involvement has been an essential component for the development of the Smart Map 2050 LRTP. And this has included engagement with residents, agencies, local organizations, private groups, both residential and business, and government entities, to help us address the future mobility needs here in Miami-Dade County. Next slide. So here you see some engagement highlights, which we're very proud of. And as a result, we've had 25 in-person and virtual public outreach workshops, which we've hosted with a total attendance of more than 500 participants, plus today's participants, and more than 1,000 surveys completed. Also, we've had our interactive needs plan tool. So if you attended one of our workshops, in-person workshops, you were part of that and you worked on the interactive needs plan tool. And that was really, really important in receiving feedback. We've received 1,300 visits to that and 1,300 points of input for that. So that has been very important. And this data is helping the TPO planners like Francesca and Chris and Maritere to make informed decisions about future transportation projects, the policies and investments, trying to improve Miami-Dade County's transportation system's efficiency, safety, and sustainability. Next slide, please. So we had some in-person workshops in fall of 2023, and on the left there, you will see it cycling through each of the workshops that we held. Now, TPA is a transportation planning area, and Miami-Dade County is divided into 7 TPAs, and each TPA is distinguished by its own characteristic, its growth rates, its needs, and transportation challenges. So some municipalities fall within multiple TPAs, including areas within the incorporated Miami-Dade County. So in the fall 2023, as you see on the right there, we visited each of these TPAs to understand the vision for the future of our transportation system in each of the specific areas. Okay, thank you. Next slide. And then, of course, we've complemented the in-person workshops with some pop-up events, and where we just kind of showed up. And these were really great because these engaged mainly students, and they were held at 14 different community colleges and university campuses throughout Miami-Dade County. They consisted of like a smaller scale technique to conduct direct outreach with the student body, to provide information and gather feedback. So this was really great one-on-one activities with the students as they are our future. Next slide, please. Then, of course, we've had the virtual outreach workshops, events, which you are part of today. And we've had 4 of them. Hopefully, some of you have been a part of all 4. And if you have, thank you so much for following us and being with us. And we are here today on our 4th one. And it's been important because the information that we've actually gathered from these as well has helped us to develop the 2050 Lrtp, your questions from the past 3. In addition, this has been a great educational opportunity for us to talk to you about where we are and keep you updated in our process. And please remember that all these VOEs, including this one, most likely at the end of the week, if not next week, are posted and will be posted on the TPO's YouTube channel. So if you missed any of them and you're wanting to see one, go to the TPO's YouTube channel, Miami-Dade TPO's YouTube channel, and you can watch it at your leisure. Next slide. So we've developed, throughout the process, we developed a comprehensive communication schedule for social media, weekly e-newsletters, and e-blast. And that included information regarding upcoming in-person and virtual workshops, publication updates, and survey details for the Lrtp. So there were approximately 100 social media posts on our X account, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as we had 40 e-blasts and e-newsletter articles, which were produced. And if you're not receiving our weekly e-newsletter, please drop us a note that you want to sign up, or you can email information@mdtpo.org and ask to be signed up for our weekly newsletter. So I just did a quick little plug there. And then all of this outreach had a total reach of 14,000. So I would also be remiss to not include that we collaborated with the library system, municipalities, and transportation partners to help get the word out. So that was also very important. Next slide, please. So our public input surveys, as you can see here, we had 4 surveys that we have sent out and administered throughout the development process. And each one will show you how many submissions. This totals 979. The surveys were distributed at the key milestones and were available in English, Spanish, and Creole. And they were also available in accessible formats upon request. And they were administered through the 2050 Lrtp website, QR codes, as you see there at the workshops, and printed versions. And they were, again, posted at all of the 50 Miami-Dade County library branches and distributed through our transportation and municipal partners. So now I am going to bike to the first station to meet Maritere. Maritere?
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being part of this VOE and the journey of the 2050 Lrtp. Let's take a quick rail ride into the performance phase, including a little bit of the socioeconomic data development. As some of you may remember from previous VOE, performance phase is where we set the goals and the objectives for the Lrtp. They are like the steering wheel of the car. They guide the direction of the plan. Next slide, please. So In the next slide, we will take a shortcut in this journey through the socioeconomic data development. It's important to know why we use population and employment data during the LRTP process and any planned transportation project. Next, please. So population and employment estimates are critical inputs in the transportation planning because they help the planners understand the travel patterns and demands within a given area. By analyzing the SE data, planners can identify areas of high population density and employment concentration and develop transportation solutions that connect people to this area in an effective manner. For example, transportation planners may use SE data estimates to evaluate the demand for public transit, roadway capacity, or active transportation infrastructure such as bikeways and pedestrian walkways. If population and employments are projected to increase in certain areas, transportation planners can use this data to anticipate future transportation needs and plan for the necessary infrastructure improvement. SE data can also help transportation planners understand the unique transportation challenges of different demographic groups, such as elderly or low-income population, and develop targeted solutions to address these challenges. Overall, population and employment estimates are crucial inputs for transportation planning because they help ensure that transportation infrastructure is designed to meet the needs of the people who use it. Next, please. So here is and this slide shows an example of the metrics from the SE data. There's a ton of metrics that comes with the SE data, but this is a sample that give you an overview of the county makeup. Next slide, please. So now let's briefly touch on the goals and objectives of the LRTP. On the next slide, you will see how we organize them for the plan. Next, please. So first of all, I would like everyone and inviting everyone to scan the QR that you see on your screen and using your smartphone cameras so you can have a closer view of the goals and objective fact sheet was prepared for the plan. As you may have heard before, the theme of the LRTP is a Smart M.A.P 2050, where M.A.P stands for Mobility, Accessibility, and Prosperity. As you can see on the screen, the goals are organized by these themes, listed from the top to the bottom of the fact sheet. So now let's go quickly through them. Under the theme of mobility is our goal that by 2050, our transportation system is safe, secure, reliable, and connected. Within the theme for accessibility, we want our system to be innovative and climate resilient, which is very important for us here in the county. Then under the theme of prosperity, we desire an equitable, economically, and competitive transportation system. Also, we develop objectives for each goal by mode. So if you see on the top part of the fact sheet, from left to right, the modes start with the E-Mass Smart Transportation, which is the future of transit. Then you have bicycle, pedestrian, micromobility objectives, which aim to improve our first last mile connections. And finally, the highway freight objectives aim to make the movement of our goods more efficient. The Smart M.A.P 2050 goals and objectives have been developed through your input on those many meetings and BOEs and that Elizabeth explained, and the assistance of the transportation agencies on our steering committee. And now, as I reach my last station and I'm jumping out of this train, I would like to ask our expert LRTP tour guide, Francesca, to drive us through the project phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Terry. I'm excited to give us a driving tour of the projects phase. This project phase is really mostly about our data development and our analysis. So some of the things that we had to do data development on was our current state of congestion, and then we had to gather our gather information about our future needs, and then really strategize and analyze which groupings of these needs will really suit our goals and objectives that Mary Terry just mentioned. So on the next slide, you'll see the congestion management analysis. So here we're showing you a snippet, a sneak peek of what congestion looks like for us in the month of April. This data is actually taken from April of 2023. April is a very busy year for, busy month for Miami-Dade County residents. And we're looking at the peak PM traffic. So this is between the hours of 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. What we're seeing is really that congestion is prolific throughout the county, such that if you were driving along the county and you were taking perhaps an hour drive, you could expect at least a 22-minute delay within the county. And for Miami-Dade, the city of Miami, specifically downtown Miami, that delay could be more on the 35-minute range. But there are solutions that exist for us today, and as our county continues to grow. We are estimating that population and employment will increase, as Mary Terry mentioned in her slides. And as population and employment increases, we can do things like take transit and carpool, or use micromobility to walk and bike on those short trips instead of getting on those congested roadways. And then also we've learned that in the age of COVID, that many of us have telework available to us. So we're able to possibly work from home or work from another location that eliminates that additional trip from our system. On the next slide, another data point that we were able to gather was our needs. So we reached out to our partner agencies, such as the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, the Department of Transportation and Public Works, DTPW, and others. And we asked them to send us in what their needs are from now until 2050. And so that is illustrated for you on the map to the left. We're also showing a pie chart of the mix of modes that we receive from those agencies. So you'll see that those agencies really gave us a healthy amount of bike, ped, and micromobility projects, about 45%. And then another 45% were highway, roadway, bridge related type of projects. Then on the right, we were also able to collect input from the members of the public, our residents, through those pop-up events that Elizabeth mentioned, and through our community workshops at each transportation planning area. We were able to ask members of the public, residents, and even our guests to input the transportation projects that they would like to see in the future. So that map is shown for you on the right. Also, we have a pie chart showing you the split between the modes for that public input as well. And you'll see that the public really is interested in seeing bike, pedestrian, and micromobility projects, as well as transit. And so it is our job as the Transportation Planning Organization, the TPO, through the 2050 LRTP, to try to balance these needs that we see from the agencies, that we see from the public, and really put together a robust set of projects that accomplishes all of the goals and objectives that we shared. On the next slide, you'll see additional ways that we start to analyze these projects. Planners use scenario planning because we don't have a crystal ball for the future. Scenario planning helps us analyze future alternatives. And so what we've done is we've organized the projects that we've received into these buckets. So the first bucket, so to speak, is Smart Step. This emphasizes our first last mile connections, those bike, ped, micromobility projects. The next is SMART program. This focuses on expanding our existing bus metro rail system throughout the county, and it emphasizes transit. The next section is Smart Freight, which emphasizes expedited delivery, ensuring that we can receive those Amazon packages to our front step, or ensuring that the trucks can get to Publix so that we can get our local groceries. Those trips are important to us. And then last but not least, we also have Smart Tech, which emphasizes the unknown unknowns, the things that we know we believe may come to our transportation network, but we just haven't quite integrated or hasn't fully been integrated yet. And so we are looking at all of these package of projects to understand which is the best combination. On the next slide, you'll see how we use this information to measure it against our goals and objectives. So what we're showing here is considering all of those scenarios that I just mentioned against our baseline. So our baseline would be the existing system plus the cost feasible plan from the previous long-range transportation plan. So starting there as a baseline, we're building on each of those ideas with the bucket of projects that we have put together for 2050. And what we can see is scenarios such as Smart Step really hit the mark for the goal of safe, secure, and reliable. The goal of the scenario of Smart Freight really helps us with our economic competitiveness, and Smart Program Plus helps us with connectivity. So understanding that each of these scenarios hit different marks for us for our goals and objectives. Again, we're really putting together the best grouping of these projects so that we can address our goals and objectives. So with that, I'm going to drive on over and continue our journey to Chris Rosenberg, who will talk to us about how we take this project list and create a cost feasible plan.
Thank you so much, Francesca, and welcome aboard to all of our attendees. We are at Port Miami, and I am the captain of the ship, Chris Rosenberg, Chief of Transportation Planning for the Miami-Dade TPO. And today I'm going to be cruising you through the priority section of our LRTP, in which we have our revenue forecasts and our cost feasible plan. On the next slide, we break down the parts of a cost feasible plan. After our teams compiled the over 1,000 projects that were discussed earlier from all of our public outreach, we then need to compile that into a cost feasible plan. So what is a cost feasible plan? One of the federal requirements of producing a long-range transportation plan is displaying fiscal constraint. So as TPO transportation planners, we consult with all of our transportation agencies, and we develop a reasonably anticipated forecast of revenues over a 25-year horizon. We then have to fit those buckets that Francesca was talking about and maximize our goals and objectives into priority periods that display fiscal constraint. So the 4 priority periods are on the screen before you. The first 3 are 5-year periods. The first period, fiscal years 25 through 2030, is consistent with our 5-year transportation plan. Not only is it consistent with our 5-year transportation plan, but all of our periods are consistent with our transportation agency partners and documents including the County Transit Development Plan, Transportation Master Plan, the Florida Department of Transportation plans, which there are multiple of those, as well as other agency partner plans. Up next, we will review the representation within our cost feasible plan by the submitting agencies by the numbers. Out of the over 1,000 projects, the anticipated revenues allowed us to incorporate 753 projects, which on the next slide, you'll be able to see how those are represented. So as you can see, out of the 753 projects within the 25-year period, the graphic to the left shows which agency projects were incorporated into the cost feasible plan. While DTPW has the most projects, FDOT projects had the highest cost, which we display in the 2024 value in the middle circle on the ring that you see on the screen in front of you. On the right, we then have to inflate those project costs into the year in which they're anticipated to be incorporated, or year of expenditure. So as you can see, we have a distribution from all of our different transportation agencies, the costs of their projects, and when they are anticipated to be developed. On the next slide, we display an extract of the different agency representation. So here, where we were seeing the multiple agencies that have worked with us throughout the last 2 years, FDOT, DTPW, our municipal partners, the Greater Miami Expressway Authority, or GMX, the Seaport, which we're at today, SFRTA, or the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, and the Miami-Dade Aviation Department. There is also a category called TBD, which has not been assigned to an agency, and these projects actually came from members of the public. So these projects are in the cost feasible plan and as a direct result of the public outreach that we had and ideas that were submitted from members of the public. On the next slide, we have an extract of the different years of expenditure dollars that are represented on our goals and objectives. So as you can see, we have covered all of the mobility, accessibility, and prosperity themes of the long-range transportation plan, while also keeping a balance on all the goals and objectives. Safe and reliable, connected, innovative, climate resilient, equitable, and economically competitive. While, as Francesca had mentioned in her presentation, there are unknown unknowns when it comes to innovation. So those future technologies that have yet to be developed are still being represented in this plan as technology continues to be developed and technology advances. On the next slide, we display an extract of our SMART plan and the projects that build off of the original SMART plan. Going into the future as transportation planners, the original 6 corridors of the SMART plan transitioned into the SMART program recently for their implementation. And as planners, we must ensure that the cost to finish building these corridors, along with operating and maintaining each of them, are covered within the cost feasible plan. Additionally, as displayed in the performance slides covered by Miami-Dade, our population and employment numbers call for additional transit expansion into the future for future readiness. As you can see, we have incorporated this initiative throughout the priorities of the cost feasible plan. And on the next slide, last but not least, this is the display of fiscal constraint. As a federal requirement, this slide demonstrates each priority band and the anticipated revenue for that period, and the project costs that represent those projects in each priority period. As you can see, the cost feasible plan achieves fiscal constraint in each priority band as required by the Code of Federal Regulations. So I will now hand my steering wheel of the boat back to Francesca, where we're arriving at Miami International Airport, and she's going to be flying us home. Francesca?
Thank you, Christopher. Excited to fly us into the future in our final phase for today. It's a little bittersweet. I'm so glad that we've been able to talk about all of the phases of the LRTP, and this represents the last phase of our relate to transportation that are a little bit above and beyond. So we will be talking about the supportive studies that we've conducted and the ETDM, or efficient transportation decision-making process, that we've undergone for these projects. So on the next slide, let's first talk about we have endeavored on a 2-step process to talk about, to uncover all of the projects and studies that we've done over the last 5 years. So on the next slide, since the last LRTP, we have conducted several studies as an agency, the Transportation Planning Organization, and those studies include things such as understanding connected autonomous vehicles, understanding affordable housing, climate resiliency, etc. So we've compiled all of those studies that we've done since the last LRTP and evaluated those projects or those studies against our goals and objectives to ensure that they really do support the list of cost feasible projects that we've put together. On the next slide, you'll see a sampling of what those projects are. So we have endeavored to update our bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and you see how that lights up the board when it comes to addressing the cost feasible plan and our goals and objectives. We've also updated our county freight plan, and similarly, this hits many of our goals and objectives when we want to have an equitable future, economically competitive future, an innovative future. All of these things light up when we think about our future freight planning and truck parking, and even updating our Port Miami. We also looked at affordable housing in each of our transportation planning areas. So we want to understand where people can afford to live and how that affects their travel. The further people have to live out or move out because of affordable housing, the more they may have to drive and commute. And so we want to understand what the relationship is there so that we can provide more mobility options to help alleviate those costs. We've also, as I mentioned, investigated climate resiliency. And climate resiliency is very important to us. Every time we have a king tide here and there's heavy rain, we understand how the weather really can affect our ability to move around our county. We've also updated our congestion management dashboard, and this will help us be able to highlight and view the information that we've updated for our analysis of the current congestion of our network, so that people can use that information to inform themselves, and that it also informs future planning studies. We've also looked at connected autonomous vehicles. So we want to understand, as that technology comes on board, how will we be able to um, uh, cope with autonomous vehicles in our roadway? Will we be able to connect them so that we understand their travel patterns? And then we also investigated emerging tunneling technologies. Tunneling isn't a new technology, but it is something that we can revise and revamp to help alleviate our congestion once again. And then we've also done a study about future transit corridors, the Smart Plan 2.0. You may be familiar with the Smart Plan. It is the plan to extend our Metro Rail, Metro Bus system, specifically along 6 corridors. And so here we're looking at more ways that we can improve premium transit. Then we've also done a telecommuting study, as mentioned earlier. We have learned from our experiences in COVID that people are able to telecommute. And so we want to understand, how does that affect our travel patterns? And then last but not least, we have urban air mobility. Yes, flying cars like the Jetsons. We want to understand, again, those unknown unknowns that we mentioned before, and how people may be able to move around the county, move regionally using urban air mobility. And not even just people, but people and goods could possibly move through this mode. So that's an overview of our supportive studies. Let's also talk about what we've done with some of our environmental analysis. On the next slide. On this slide, we'll start to talk about our efficient transportation decision making, or ETDM. And so ETDM is really inherent to Florida. It is a process that we can ensure that we are helping enhance and protect our environment. So on the next slide, let's talk a little bit about the ETDM process. So what we've done is, with that full list of with the full list of cost feasible projects, we've been able to look at the purpose and need of those projects and really investigate the existing conditions, the current environmental climate, the population that lives around those projects, and understand what are the potential effects of each of those projects. For this case, for the LRTP's purposes, this is a very high-level preliminary screening. It's called a planning level screen. And as projects advance from one priority period to the next, they are subject to additional environmental screenings. So this is just the preliminary phase for us to understand what potential risks there may be, but we continue this process rather, as each project moves forward. On the next slide, just a deep dive on how we're able to investigate each of those projects through the ETDM screening. We have an environmental screening tool, and that tool uses it's an interactive database that uses many GIS layers, or many data layers, to evaluate the projects. So we can understand, again, what the population is around that project, what the environmental impacts are around that project, if there's a specific habitat or species of animal or plant that we should be aware of. It will light up, it will pop up for us on that environmental screening tool. So this, in a nutshell, really shows you all of the ways that we are creating a cost feasible plan, creating a long range transportation plan that's really fully thought out, that has been involved and vetted through you along the way. And with that, I'll toss, and the next step is to, on the next slide, you'll see our next step. And our next step is actually taking this plan to the TPO Governing Board for adoption in this September 2024. Again, we've talked you through all of the phases this morning: people, performance, projects, priorities, and policy. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. And at this moment, I'll toss it back to Elizabeth to close us out.
All right. Thank you, Francesca. Wonderful information as always. And everyone, thank you for being with us today. Here is the management team. We have Francesca, who you heard from, Chris, as well as myself, and our information if you want to reach out to us at a later time. And, thank you to everyone who has provided questions throughout this event. And thank you for providing your email addresses so we can respond directly to you afterwards. And if you have questions later, you're thinking about something, you can email Francesca, Chris, or myself your questions, and we will get back to you. So this is your management team. Let's go to the next slide. So again, I want to encourage you all to stay involved and learn more. Again, here is our 2050 LRTP website address. You can use your phone to scan the QR code right now if you want to, for easy access. And remember, there is a virtual room within the website. I really encourage you to go into the virtual room. It's a lot of fun, and it has a lot of really good information for everyone. And then let's see. And then finally, yes, if you're on social media, again, you can use the hashtag Miami-Dade in 2050. So thank you everyone for being with us here for our 4th virtual outreach event. And we look forward to seeing you all later, and please stay involved. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.